Every week we hold a 15-minute tooltip session that highlights a unique feature within CrowdMark. And today we'll be taking a closer look at moving from online assessments to a hybrid workflow. So two of our main goals for today's session are to discuss how you can use CrowdMark to move from purely online to hybrid workflows. And then we'll also be discussing or exploring 4 different strategies to set up your hybrid assessment. So for those who may be unfamiliar or new to CrowdMark, let's first go ahead and quickly review what exactly CrowdMark is. So CrowdMark is a grading and assessment software solution that enables educators to grade paper-based as well as digital exams and assignments almost 3 times faster than traditional workflows, while also having the ability to leave much richer feedback for students. A little bit of history here about CrowdMark. In the early days, CrowdMark was actually designed to digitalize the grading of paper-based assessments, which is what we call administered assessments. But in response to the pandemic, CrowdMark actually pivoted. We wanted to support institutions to deliver and grade assessments completely remotely. And as a response, we actually designed the assigned workflow so that students could complete as well as submit their assessments completely digitally and online. In this chart, you can see that pre-pandemic, about 90% of the work was in person, and during the pandemic, it was almost 100% online. And now that we are in a new normal, institutions are looking for a way to support both in-person as well as online assessments. So CrowdMark does have 2 distinct workflows, the administered as well as the assigned, which can be used for hybrid assessments. We'll start by looking at these 2 workflows, and then we'll discuss how you can use the assigned assessment workflow, which is generally associated with online and remote learning, in a little bit more of a flexible way in a hybrid setting for in-person assessments. So let's quickly review our administered or paper-based workflow here. There are a few steps that instructors or facilitators follow when setting up a paper-based assessment within CrowdMark. Firstly, they will go ahead and upload their assessment template to CrowdMark. They'll print off the generated booklets. Students will go ahead and complete their work on a unique QR-coded booklet. And then after the assessments or the exams are completed, the booklets are then scanned and uploaded by the instructional team back into CrowdMark. At this point in time, they are matched, and then the digital grading and returning of grades starts to take place. Here we have an example of our administered in-person workflow. So as you can see, every single generated booklet does have a unique QR code on every single page. If instructors do choose to use automated matching, you'll also have a section added onto the cover page where students can fill in their first name, last name, and student ID number. And then on the last page here, we can also see an example of a bubble sheet. So if you do have any multiple choice questions that are part of the assessment, this is generally where the students will fill in their correct answers. So let's go ahead and switch gears here a little bit and take a look at the assigned or digital workflow. So this workflow does require students to have access to a smartphone, a tablet, or even a computer, as well as a stable internet connection. And there are a few steps that the instructor or facilitator also has to follow when setting up the remote assessment. The first thing that they will want to go ahead and do is create the assessment on CrowdMark, and then they'll go ahead and schedule the assessment to be distributed to students. A direct email is sent to students upon distribution of the assessment. And then students will simply go ahead and access their CrowdMark account from any web browser in order to view the assessment, upload their answers, and submit their completed work. After this has been completed, just like the administered workflow, the grading team can go ahead and go into the assessments and either return grades or review the student's work. So let's go ahead and take a look at this quick video here, illustrating how the assigned assessment workflow works and what it looks like from a student's point of view to go ahead and submit their answers to their assessment. As you can see within this example, the student has gone on to submit both an image PDF document as well as a text entry for text response questions. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how to use the assigned workflow within an in-person setting. So in this suggested workflow, students would come to class to complete an assigned or digital assessment under supervision. The instructor would basically schedule the assessment distribution time for when students will be in class completing the assessment. And then students can simply use a device to log into CrowdMark, view the questions, and submit their work. Students would, of course, need access to their devices throughout the assessment, so they may need to be monitored within this kind of setting. As you can see here, there are a few steps involved. The instructional team will go ahead and simply create that assigned assessment. They'll distribute the assessment. Students will use their device to log in. And then the assessment is basically completed under direct supervision. We have another workflow here that we can go ahead and take a closer look at, and it also involves the assigned or remote workflow. So this is within an in-person setting with limited access. So basically with this setup, students complete the assessment in person and they only access their device to upload their work to CrowdMark at the very end of the exam. So questions would be accessed outside of CrowdMark via a whiteboard or a separate booklet or perhaps even a sheet of paper that is distributed to each student. No phones or devices would be used while completing the assessment. And the instructor would basically create the assigned or digital assessment through CrowdMark. They'd schedule distribution for the end of the assessment and allow enough time for students to take photos of their work and submit their submissions within CrowdMark. So perhaps about 5 to 10 minutes to do this. Students come into class and complete the assessment under supervision. And like I mentioned, they basically have the option here to display the question on the whiteboard or print a separate sheet of paper. Students handwrite their answer on paper, and then once the time is up, students would just simply use their devices to take photos and submit their work online. So that concludes our short tooltip session today on moving from online to hybrid workflows. I do hope that you have learned something new. At this point in time, I will go ahead and just pause here for any questions or comments. I can see that something did come up in the chat, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it very quickly. So Aaron asks, are there any plans to make your bubble sheets a little bit more accessible? Right now, the bubbles are very small. Yes, we definitely have heard this feature request before. It has been requested by other instructors at various institutions, and it is something our development team is considering a little bit more closely. But at this point in time, the bubble sheet is standard. So it is one size. So you do have the option to add in a single bubble sheet, which is equivalent to 100 questions. And then you also have the option to add in a secondary bubble sheet, which would be equivalent to 200 multiple choice questions. So unfortunately, at this point in time, it is standard, but we hope to see that at some point in the future. All right, does anyone have any final questions or comments or thoughts before we go ahead and conclude our session today? I did go ahead and drop a quick little survey in the chat at the beginning of our tooltip session, so I would appreciate if anyone who is interested can fill that out. It will tell us a little bit more about what we can create for you in the future. And if you do have any questions after today's session, you can also contact our support team. Our email is support@crowdmark.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you so much again for joining me today, and I hope you enjoy the